is something I want to talk about, just because I want to, but also could be useful to you if you're doing A-level English Lit, because I'm talking about one of the books that you might have to read for that. So if you're in that school of criteria, lucky for you, here's a free study resource. But one of the books, basically, I've had to read for my prep work for the English Lit A-level courses is Tess of the Urbervilles, or however you pronounce that. I'm horrible with names. Basically a book set in late Victorian times about this woman who you can see is called Tess, and basically it's her. She's not the lowest of the low, but she's lower stance of society. She's a cottager basically, and she gets thrown into two very different situations where she's placed amongst higher members of society who she ends up getting entwined with romantically, but she favours one more than the other, but ends up having bad luck with both, and more tragic bad luck with the one she favours basically. So the first man she ends up with is Alexander d'Urberville, Alec in the book. He is her 31st cousin, supposedly, and to claim kin and reassemble this knightly blood that she finds out she has, they try to marry, or the family wants them to get married, but they don't get married. And then she moves on, has a really bad experience with him, to another fella at a dairy farm called Angel Clare, and she really likes Angel, and they get married, and then Angel finds out about the whole Alex thing, and then they end up staying married, but he leaves her basically because of old standards of sacredity, because she had a baby with the other fella, but the baby died, and they weren't even married. So his morals were shady as hell, and also he had also had a slight affair with a woman before in the past, because he was irreproachable, which means he didn't change basically. He was stuck in his own ideals and was basically hypocritical. But what I wanted to talk about, that's a brief synopsis of the book. Now to get into the thing, I wanted to talk about basically almost every character, not every single one, but almost every character, and every character who kind of has like a semi-importance presence in the book is very polarized and is symbolic. My favourite quote is always, we are greater than the sum of our noble parts," from Looking for Alaska. But what if we are greater than that? What if there's a stage above that where, other than being human being and a spiritual being, we could in somehow represent, a sort of trait or a entire scheme? Something you see a lot in fiction, especially things like mortality plays, like in spectacles, very big in Shakespeare, and because this is in the style of a tragedy, is also present in this, where it is a character represents something, like there's a character representing impurity, there's a character representing purity, there's a character representing chastity, and there's a character representing debauchery. Basically, there's these jumps and jumps. And then within it, you have these characters who are representing these things, and they also have a polar pair, who is another character with the opposite of them. So if someone's pure, they're impure, and they kind of intertwine in a wrong way. And, the main pairings of these are, Alec and Angel, because, one's bad, but she has to love him because of the kinhood. But the other is amazing and lovely, and he's a great human, and he's like image of the perfect man for a woman like Tess, but she can't be with him because of the impurity given by the impure to the pure. And then another one, there is Tess and Mercy Chant, who is the woman that Angel is like supposed to marry because of familyness and stuff. So they are, polar opposites of the spectrum. And then there's some other ones that aren't so prevalent, which is like where you get Angel's two brothers, who are these really sophisticated scholars, and then Tess's siblings, who are just wild, unruly children. Or when Tess is living with the first Urbervilles, with Alec, his mother, she's deaf, blind, mute. You barely see her, but she's the owner of where she's working. She ends up working as a poultry farmer. So she never gets any advice. She's completely cold to her because the woman doesn't like acknowledge her, can't acknowledge her, doesn't view her as anything. But then when she works at the next farm where Angel's at, the Mr. Crook, who is the owner of that farm, is incredibly open to Tess, embracive to Tess, and he, you know, cares for her, looks after her, looks towards her as like his own daughter, not as a cold presence who's just helping her out. And then there's so many other types of these polarized characters in the book, other than, you know, the ones you would really expect. And it just shows how, other than being, you know, what you are, you can, to other people looking in regards to their greater sphere of living, you can be sort of a personified version of a trait or of an emotion, of a feeling, of a standard. You can be to someone the complete ideal of purity or impurity. You can be a degenerate, you can be ascendant, you can be whatever you're seen as, basically. And your actions, yes, of course, they do improve this or decrease your view, but ultimately the view is coming from the viewer. If you do your best to, you know, improve how you're seen, but the person is doing nothing to change how they look, that's not going to improve anything. So I've kind of gone off on a bit of a tangent, but yes, Tess of the Urbervilles, if you're reading this for fun, if you're reading this for the lesson, look into it as sort of a representation of inner traits and personalities and ways of being personified as people in the traditional sort of Shakespearean mortality play style, which is a lot less prevalent nowadays in writing compared to older days, and even at this time it was uncommon, sort of. So yes, and if you're not even reading this book and just watching this video, because you are watching this video, and I don't know why you would if you're not reading the book, but then just take from account that regardless of what you do and how you do, people are going to view you as an internalized feeling, externalized basically. People like to do that because it's the best way to cope when something is when someone is something so recognizable as a single trait. Then that's more bearable, that's more endurable than, you know, the complex human being. But when we can, and we often opt to if we can, turn someone into a singular action or emotion, we will, without even knowing. It's a complete subconscious doing. So yes, be wary of that in life. How people look at you is dependent on how they look, not what you do. And also read Tess of the Urbervilles. If you have to read it for the A-level, then read it. You should have already read it by now, because we start like soon. Okay, that's that.